gentlemen, and welcome to the Nobody Asked Me Guys show. Guys, listen, I'm your guest, Melvin Casey Lars. We have with us this evening a dynamic trio, and that trio consists of Mr. Ryan Singh, writer, producer, outstanding dad. He's an actor. He's just a real Renaissance man. And you have with him his outstanding, gorgeous twins, Ava and Sebastian. Good evening, guys. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Now, Brother Ryan, as you know, you know how we rock and roll on the Nobody Asked Me Guys show, and you guys have this fantastic project called H.E.N.R.I, and I know it's been a collaboration with you and the twins, and so we don't want to belabor the issue, but we do want to discuss, and I'm just going to say for our audience, you know, we're going to discuss, obviously we're going to discuss H.E.N.R.I, and we're going to discuss just dads in general, and you guys know on my show we talk about humanitarianism. You know, we have a black dad here with his twins, and they work together and do things together, contrary to all the myths that are out there. So we will touch a little topic here, a little topic there. But anyway, enough of my babble, Brother Ryan. As always, as I say to Brother Ryan audience, is that I enjoy talking with him all the time. And guys, you already know I'm the senior of the group, and it's always great to see a young brother do positive things and continue to work and continue to move forward. And then to have his beautiful young children there with him is a bonus for all of us. So Brother Ryan, let's just jump right in here, my friend. Now, you know, everybody's excited to hear about H.E.N.R.I and how the process got started and all of that kind of thing. So I am going to, my brother, yield any questions, and I'll just let you free flow until you are ready to start.
No, you have to direct the questions. I'm not answering anything I pleaded the fifth to anything that is not asked of me.
Okay, well, you know what? I definitely want to make sure that we get Ava's take and we get Sebastian's take, and you know how excited they are to be able to work on a movie with their dad, to collaborate. I know they've done several commercials and they've done things in the film industry already, as well as you being their dad. So with dad being the head of this entire process, how did you actually get started into, if I can just say, cinema? I know that's a broad topic, and I know that's not actually what it is, but if you can share with us, Mr. Singh, how did you actually get started in this entire process of being a writer, producer, actor, etc.?
Well, if I have to go so far back, I had my own father who was instrumental in getting me started. He's a writer, director as well, and he did a lot of community stage plays and so on. He brought me up at an event in the old country when I was just about their age, a little younger. And that was my first introduction onto stage. And then I went on, became 11 years old, got cast in a couple of plays. And I had always loved performing. And so just continuing on, when I came to Canada about 16 years old, I wanted to get into films. And my father had moved here in Canada before I did, and my mom. And so my mom didn't know anything about the business. And my dad, he's a Rastafari, so he's born Babylon, basically. He aspired to get into the business, but he didn't have the patience to really understand all the nuances. And, you know, it's a lot of give and take in this industry. And, you know, 27 years earlier, it was very difficult for Black people to break into the industry. So needless to say, my mom, knowing that this was my desire, took me to an agent. Didn't turn out to be a good agent. So for 5 years, I just was trotting along until I reconnected with my father again. And this time I came on board a project as a producer. And so we were able to create this play, and the community received it very well. But following the play in 2001, I decided that I wanted to get into film. So I bought a camera and was all ready to go into film. And dad comes again and says, I want to do another play. This is about 2006. And so I spent another year developing that next play with him. And he wanted to document the play. He preceded the documentation of theatrical performances. Before, it's now very common for people to record theatrical plays and even make feature films out of them. But my dad was like, we got to document this. And I went on, and being the producer, I ended up spending $13,500 to record a 2-hour play, because all of the actors decided to speak more than 6 lines and became principal performers. And, but they had dedicated at least a year or so into the rehearsal and so on. And I became actor. And becoming actor, I was like, how do I capitalize on this? Again, it's sometimes very challenging to break in, especially with a person like myself who has an accent. You gotta have a standard American accent. And so I continue to create work, small films, documentaries, and I wasn't one to just sit down and wait for opportunities to happen. I was creating opportunities. Lo and behold, I created them. And now I had to be a shining example to them. And so instead of watching them, hoping that they could see themselves represented on television, I wanted to get them involved in making television. And so, Ava, please sit. Thank you. And so they're here. And, we went into making a production together, and it was my first opportunity to work with both of them.
Now, so speaking of them, may I interrupt, and if we can go back just a little bit, you said in the old country, where might that be?
Guyana.
Guyana. Okay.
Most people might know it as a place where don't drink the Kool-Aid, Jim Jones. Jonestown.
Yeah. So listen, as you were sharing with us about your excitement and your excitement and your desire about the film business and the directing and the acting and the whole nine, and about the creating, and these two wonderful twins, Ava and Sebastian, are here. Sebastian, if you will allow me to go to Ava first. We're all gentlemen on this set, and we like to give our ladies the first opportunity to speak. So, Sebastian, I'm going to ask Ava first if she would just kind of like to share with us what her interests are, what really excited her about going into acting and directing and producing. Ava, would you like to share with us about that?
Yes. I started acting when I was a baby and I was born. And it's really fun until like on Christmas once, we got a Google device and I stopped asking my mommy and my daddy questions. And I asked my favorite Google questions. And then my daddy said, Henry. And then he made up a phone called Henry. And he was getting all ready for it. And he was like, boom, boom, brum, brum, brum. And he's getting so ready that he called over 30 people, like 30 people to help make this film. It was a lot of people to help make this film, even though it's a short film. And my favorite part is a surprise.
Okay. Well, listen, is it cool to work with your dad? How cool is that? We're being able to work with your dad.
It's really cool. And how I got director was I directed my grandma. And how I got producer, I just put this.
Great. Mr. Sebastian, if I might ask you the same question, sir, what interested you in acting and if you can just kind of share with us what really interested you and how you got going, and if it's cool to work with Dad, or how does all of this work, Mr. Sebastian? I've never had this opportunity.
Um, uh, um, um, so I was really excited on making this film, and and I was a bit scared at start, but then I didn't become scared anymore, and then when it was finished, I felt proud of myself. And so we took the film 2 years ago, and then we edited it in COVID, and then after uh um like after we saw some trailers, and we saw it in different languages, like the closed captions, and then um after when we thought it was ready, um um our dad put it in 21 film festivals.
Wow. So and either one of you can answer this question, either Ava or Sebastian. When you see yourselves on screen, and actually both of you should answer it, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel proud of myself, and like so excited, and I'm like, wow, I'm there on TV. I didn't know I was gonna be there. And it's actually fun making movies, and you and checks, and once I did film, but for kids you don't earn a lot of money. Like you earn like $5, $8, or $10. But earned a lot of money.
Okay.
It's really fun making it.
I hear you. I hear you, Miss Ava. Mr. Sebastian, when you're sitting and watching yourself on film, how does that make you feel?
I feel proud of myself, and I really want to show my friends that I'm on TV. But some movies, they're not for kids. But for like movies that's for kids, I want my friends to see, and I feel very proud of myself.
Fantastic. Papa Ryan,
Yes.
can you tell me, sir, how the idea of Henry was born?
Yeah, as Ava explained, did a good job at explaining it.
Yes, she did.
Our family got a Google device one Christmas, and I saw them reacting to the Google device. And a couple of years later, I wanted to make a film, as I said, and include them in it. And so I started to write the script, but then I saw the opportunity of engaging them in the writing of that script. Their voices were important in the telling of the story, and I consulted with them, and they gave me ideas as to how they want to see the story evolve, what they would say, those kind of things. And so we were able to draft a script that involved them. Ava was even a tough negotiator. I had her named Simone, after similar to Simon's character. And she's like, no, I do not want to be named Simone. I want to be named Sophie. And if I don't get named Sophie, I'm not playing. Talk about diva. Yeah, and so she was named Sophie, which was ironic because as I was doing some research recently, there is actually an AI that is called Sophia. And so it's interesting that we are exploring the science fiction theme, and there are stories that are very similar because no stories is new under this earth. We're just telling it in a different way. And because there's just so few BIPOC films, Black and Indigenous people of color, we get to tell stories from our point of view as persons of colors. So that was very interesting.
And it sounds interesting as well. Sebastian, how much did you have to, and I want you to know that Mr. Lars is really just messing with your dad right now. But I would just like to know, how much did you have to correct your dad on the film? Did you have to do a lot of work getting him straightened out on this film?
Not really. No, not that much. He was pretty good.
Okay. Well, that's good. Listen, well, listen, what, and some of my audience, you can't see the questions, but they're asking, could you explain a little more detail without giving everything away about Henry and what does it involve?
Absolutely. It's a story, it's a short story about a family who's lost their father. And as a result, they're in the midst of grief. And so while the mother is fielding calls from supporters calling to wish her well and give her sympathy, they are more interested in asking questions about the passing, particularly the son, Simon. And so Sebastian plays Simon, and he turns to the H.E.N.R.I device to ask questions. And the H.E.N.R.I can only respond to him in as much information as it knows. And so unless it's been updated, it doesn't have the sufficient information. The updates come from the relationships and observation it makes. You know, think of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and the data that they collect. We are surrounded by data all the time, and because of repetitive actions, those data get programmed and we get sent advertisement. So I liken the machine to being a similar sort of design, where we're accumulating data and transmitting those information back to each other. So it's basically a story about the relationship between humans and the machines that serve them.
Okay, all the thumbs are going up, so that's great. Listen, I don't want to keep the kids all night, nor you, Mr. Singh, but I would like to ask this. When Ava mentioned to us about the film being submitted to 21 different film outlets and that kind of thing, can you kind of share just a little bit of the process with the audience as to how that works and
yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely. One of the big parts of making a project is getting it seen and getting it seen by as many people as possible. And so film festival is one of those routes. And so we've gone through the film freeway, where we are able to submit to hundreds and hundreds of film festivals, choose the festival that we want to, and submit and hope that we get programmed as part of their film lineup. Toronto Black Film Festival, which just concluded, was our first world premiere where we shared our film with the world. It was a tremendous success because we had a public relations person on board, Sasha Stolz, and our director did a fantastic job with this film, Katarzyna Kochani. And as Ava said, we had over 30 crews that participated. Our other actor, the lady that played the mom, is a good friend of mine, Andrea Grant. She did a fantastic job, and she also doubled as a producer on the project. So what it means is that we financed the film ourselves. And so it was an independent film for all intents and purposes. And so it's a labor of love. And so being able to communicate about the story and sharing it is something we're looking at, the possibility of expanding the story into a 4-season television series. So
great. Well, listen, before I let you guys go, I need you, Mr. Ryan Singh, to just share with us, you know, how I've asked the kids already, and now I'm going to ask you, sir.
The kids are gonna,
having the opportunity.
one moment, the kids are gonna take their leave, say goodbye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for being here, guys.
You're welcome.
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
intimate and
Dad.
personal now.
Okay, Dad. Let's talk to our audience a little bit about being that dad, having to be there, the challenges, obviously, of having to try to juggle all these balls, but it's not a challenge to love your kids. Can you just kind of share with us and kind of put those together as to the work that goes into a process like this, and especially when it involves your own children?
Well, a process like this, first and foremost, is not a big part of it is my wife. She's an avid supporter of my career and the career that I'm building with the kids. And so Cheryl Nelson Singh, she's a nurse, full-time nurse, working in management. And so she holds a full-time job, but she still comes around and supports us, whether it's taking the kids to audition if I'm outside working, or if I have to audition, helping me out with auditions. And so it's a family enterprise, not a single, I'm just dad and doing this extraordinary work. It's the whole team. And so I have to pay respects to my wife, because without her support, we couldn't have done all the work that we've been doing. And that's the gist of it. It's a team effort. It takes support from everybody, because we get auditions coming left, right, and center. Last night at 10 o'clock, I was receiving an audition for Ava. And, we have to prepare and turn these things around within the 24 to 36 hours. And so if we didn't have the support of each other, I send her emails, she sends me emails, we wouldn't be able to get a lot of these things done. It's a full-time career, having an entertainment business management, so to speak.
Okay, wow, that's great. That's great just to hear you share with the audience about how important it is to be a family unit, an entity, and that's how things work. And one last question, and I'm gonna let you go.
Now you can ask as many questions. The kids are out of here.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, listen, hey man, let's make it, Ray Charles said, make it do what it do. So let's make it do what it do. When we're in this, in the process of talking about how difficult sometimes it can be, more often than not, for people of color to get not only in the business, but to get, once you get in the business, to be able to get your work out there. Can you share a little bit about that? And what I mean about that is, when you are trying to get, and that's a loaded question, so let me frame it this way. When you are trying to get work done, but you may have rocks thrown in the path that are totally unnecessary and are totally there simply because you are not quite light enough. Is that extremely frustrating, or is it something that you can just let roll off your back, like the duck let water roll off their back? Or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
This is not a quote from me, but someone else said this: being an artist is also being an advocate. And we always have to be fighting to be in the spaces. I mean, the amount of rejections I get is phenomenal. But if I don't keep showing up as a person of color, then they can have the excuse of there's no one to fill those roles. Nobody is there. Well, let them reject me, but at least I was in the room. You had an opportunity to cast me. And so the mantra that I keep, and I got to give a shout out to my mom, she's a great supporter as well. The mantra that I keep is, tomorrow is going to be my breakthrough. So I am doing all of the work that I can today, because tomorrow is going to be my breakthrough. So every day I wake up, I keep thinking tomorrow is going to be my breakthrough. And that little mantra is something that gives me hope every day, because I know that if I do the work and I prepare myself and I'm ready, when that opportunity comes, I'm ready to play. And so today was a very successful day because I was able to sign a contract to develop 2 feature films. This is after 20 years of, yeah, 20 years of working and being vigilant at what I'm doing. But now I get an opportunity to develop 2 feature films. I don't know how far it's going to go, but with hope and luck and opportunity, I hope that these feature films will be on a screen soon. But I still have to put in the work. One of those feature films is with a writer, 19 years old, and he's written his own feature film. And he kept sending it to me since March last year and sending it to me. And when I saw this opportunity for development, I said, hey, let's do this film, let's submit it. And it was submitted, and we are going to be developing that film. And so in my path, I've always had someone that I'm mentoring, that I'm opening up a door and an opportunity and saying, walk in with me. Because I don't think that when an opportunity presents itself, one should ever walk in the door alone. We have to bring our company with us. We have to go 10 deep. Because if we don't open up, when the opportunity opens up for us, if we don't open up opportunities for others, we'll be the only person in the room and the voice will still be drowned out.
Wow. Now that is profound and powerful. Just as you share that, unfortunately, and I don't want to sound like a killjoy here, but we find so many times that that is just not the case. You know, it's usually me, my four, and no more. And people don't have that. Well, let me put it this way. It has been my experience in too many cases where the work that you've just explained is not often done. And my hat's off to you and bravo for having that attitude as to move things forward. And as you share that, and then we can move a little further on that premise, as you work at your craft and as you carry other people with you and they continue to move forward, do you encounter pushback sometimes from those that are slightly inviting you in? However, as you are trying to bring others in with you, is my actual question, do you find pushback from those individuals that are saying, no, just you, we don't want them, or we're not interested in having them right now? Do you ever get pushback from that?
That's a very loaded question. And it's a loaded question in that there are often pushbacks. I mean, there was one time my father was having a meeting, a film development meeting. Someone was interested in one of his scripts. And I wasn't sure how the meeting was going to go and what kind of environment it was. So I invited a young lady to come along, and perhaps she can meet the producers as well. Well, of course, she wanted her project to be the center of attention. And I'm like, dude, you are invited to be introduced, not to take over. And so that was a lesson learned, not very good, because I still would bring people in. And I've had situations where I've invited people, open doors, and they've literally taken my job away. Like, talk to the people that are hiring me, my clients, and I see them credited with the roles that was once mine. And I could feel it as we are working. What I still am not deterred by is that I'm not in a competitive sport. I'm in a collaborative sport. And it's not a short game, it's a long game. And if we continue to work together, we can create a great opportunity for ourselves, because it cannot be for the single person. It has to be for the whole community. When one person does something bad, the whole community is blamed. So when we are creating something good, the whole community should be blamed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's, again, very profound, very powerful. And I had to ask that question. I knew that it was a loaded question because, unfortunately, again, it's just been my experience. You see it, and as you've explained it so eloquently, the individual that you try to assist, and I don't need to repeat what you've already said, but we just see that. But in that vein, when these projects are presented and they're out there, have you had, and I hope that you have, any of those same individuals to come back or to say to you, hey, listen, I went about this the wrong way. I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity, etc. Or do they just keep going as if nothing ever happened?
Time is a healer of all wounds. And so when one is solid about their integrity and their repute, I don't have to worry about looking over my shoulder and feeling badly about the experiences I have. It hurts. It certainly does hurt because it's a rejection. But being open to it could be a learning experience. I've certainly lived to see that some people have circled back and make amends with me, like, I'm sorry, or here's an opportunity, Ryan. We won't talk about that happened before. Here's this opportunity. And those things are gratifying, because if we walk around and burn the bridges that we haven't yet crossed, we won't be able to cross any bridges, and we'll be stuck where we are. It's a long journey. The work that I'm doing is a long journey, but I'm only getting started right now. And I hope that I'm going to be able to climb mountains doing the work I'm doing.
As you share that, crossing bridges that haven't even been built yet and moving forward and building mountains, obviously just knowing you and listening to what you're sharing is that you're not ever going to be one of those individuals that box yourself in. However, are there any particular venues as far as writing or producing or working with film that have your interest in particular, that you have? I guess it's like all of us, as you've already stated, it's not about, you're not an athlete, so it's not a competition, but it's inclusion. So in the film industry, probably like most industries, we all have possibly favorites of things that we are drawn to. However, we are not adverse to the process itself. So in working with film and writing and producing and acting, do you have particular type work that you care about particularly, be it science fiction, be it romance, be it whatever?
I'm a hopeless romantic at heart, but most of my stories are dramatic. And so regardless of the type of story that there is, I like telling stories. And if I can't tell the story myself, then I collaborate with someone who might be better at telling that particular story.
Yeah.
So there's so much opportunities, and a lot of people tell me, I want to travel down this lane, or I want to travel down this lane, and why don't you focus on this? I'm like, but why should I focus on this area or that area when the opportunity is there for me to focus on everything? And even with our short film H.E.N.R.I, it gives me great pride. Yesterday we had a showcase for the Boys and Girls Club here in Toronto, and afterwards 100% of the kids were BIPOC, some South Asian, some of them Black. And what I witnessed there was that there's a yearning for stories that are BIPOC. And what was beautiful was that there were kids that were their age talking back to them, sharing their experiences, my kids, with these kids who some of them feel so far removed from the possibility of ever dreaming to be in a position like this that they would not even ask questions because they don't know if their questions would be relevant. Think about that.
Oh yeah, that's
Right.
it.
And we have to activate their dream mechanism again
Mhm.
for them to know that it is possible and it is probable and they can do it.
Yeah, yeah. And listen, help us out here a little bit. BIPOC. What exactly is BIPOC?
Black and indigenous people of color. Black, indigenous people of color.
Okay.
So they've used an expression that is all encompassing. Black. And then the indigenous is like, no, it's IBPOC. Indigenous comes first because this is the indigenous people's land. Then the blacks. And then people of color. Right? So any entity that is non-white, BIPOC or EBPOC, that expression.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, listen, is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't talked about at this point? Because I don't, you know, I don't like asking cookie cutter questions, and there are so many questions that I could
Well,
ask.
ask a question.
Okay, well, let's roll, man. I keep trying to apologize because I didn't want to keep you all night. But listen, as we talk about, let's say EBOC or BIPOC, when we talk about indigenous people, people of color, Black people, etc. And I know so many times people love to say, oh, they're playing the race card and all that kind of foolishness. However, as you've just explained, when you're working and when you saw the interaction between these children and how your kids were interacting with them and how you've already explained to us how they were even don't ask questions because they don't figure these questions will be properly addressed. When you are working with young people and when you are doing, for instance, when you were doing Henry, first Ava mentioned about the 30 people that you mentioned, etc. Did you find reluctance among any of those individuals? But at the same time, you know, sometimes we can be reluctant because of, and you mentioned it, fear. However, we can be proud to be a part of the process. So if we could just, you know, address Henry, did you find among those individuals that duality?
No, what was interesting with Henry, and I found this to be really amazing. I don't know if it's my relationship with the people that came on board or whether it was just a story. But there were some people who came aboard when I asked them to. And then there were some people who I sent the script to and they're like, look, I can refer somebody else, but I'd like to do this. And so you had that experience of everyone just wanting to be a part of the project. And because of that, I felt there was something special here, even if I didn't know it myself, because, you know, I don't want to toot my own horn. I wasn't sure of what the response would be like, even though these people were all engaged and all coming aboard and saying, we want to be a part of this project. We broke about 12 or 13 people, giving them their first credit in film or in a particular category that they haven't participated in. Of those 30 people, we had half of them, more than half of them were women in a key position. For everyone, it was particularly important for me to hear their voices, including my director, because even though I was producer, I didn't want to mansplain the experience to her. I didn't want to take away her, and she is a European girl. or woman, sorry, lady. She's a European lady. But she was so respectful to the culture. She wanted to make sure that she captured it. And as we went through, we spent almost a year working on this. And she was so attuned to, there were times when, you know, sometimes you're working with someone and you're there and there's the white person beside you and they would pay attention to the white person over you. And I brought up that nuance about one of our engagers, and she's like, I wouldn't have been able to see that. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes that happens. And so
more often than people would like to admit.
yeah. And so we were able to discuss that openly. And, you know, as she moves on to, she's done a lot of projects for black filmmakers, with black filmmakers, not for, but with black filmmakers. As she goes on to build her career as a director, there's an ally, because she's going to be so consciously aware of, how do I engage inclusivity in the projects that I make? And we see that, I saw that when I brought a project to her and she's like, who wrote this? Was it a white person? Okay, they're writing about Indigenous people. Have they consulted with the Indigenous community about this piece that they're writing? Because it seems so stereotyped, cookie cutter. If I were to be a part of this project, I want to make sure that they've done their due diligence in respecting the community and hearing the community's voice. And that's what she liked about what I've done with kids, because I didn't just give them a title, oh, I'm their father and we're working on this project, here's a producer title. She saw me engage the kids and respected their voices. And I respected it so much so that even as we were editing, the kids were like, Dad, how's that person on the phone and you don't see a shot of the phone? And I had to go back into the takes and find a shot, because it made sense that the shot was missing. And so that's the kind of respect.
That's cool. That's cool, because I mean, as we move forward, I mean, listen, this is just getting, you know, in street terms, gooder and gooder, because
that's what I told you. Ask the questions.
Yes, brother, because there are conversations that people never have because they don't know to have them. And what you are sharing with us right now is certainly an eye opener into the process of collaboration, of inclusion, in the whole nine. And unfortunately, as you know, that is a conversation that most of our less melanated brothers and sisters refuse to have. It's not your narrative. You know, you're only going by some things that people have lied to you about and try to set up a process. So, and with that stated, you know, there's so much talk about Black men, if we can discuss that. Now, in your industry, and you've just shared that out of the 30-some people, I think most of them were women, etc. And in the industry, like much in life, do you find I'm not sure how I want to ask you this question, but I often wonder, do you find men not participating because they don't feel like they would be accepted, or because, as you mentioned earlier, about all of the rejections, until possibly they've just been, unfortunately, have accepted a defeatist attitude toward moving into industries that they feel like they're not wanted?
Dude, I'm calling you dude now. Dude.
Hey man, we got it like that, brother.
For the men that are participating in the industry, they're there. For those that are not participating in the industry, is because they don't know that they could. And when they come in and they find, today, for example, I worked with a young man whose father I was working on a film with in 2011. And he called me up out of the blue and said, hey, Ryan, I have this project that I'm developing. How do I find some funding? And I said to him, well, these are the steps you got to take. These are the avenues you got to do. And this is what you must or should do to be able to be engaged in the industry. I spent a number of years doing a whole lot of different jobs outside of the industry as I wanted to be in the industry, but felt like I couldn't participate in it because I didn't, A, have a network of people I could count on or I can reach out to, B, where to go precisely, C, how to apply or the systems, D, understand the accreditation that is needed, because I keep thinking, oh, I don't have that experience. Even though I have a wealth of experience, I was my own gatekeeper. And the system is also built like that, where it's, you need this, 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 and this, but it does. But if you don't have a chaperone that tells you you don't necessarily need all of that, that you will learn it on the way, you keep yourself out. And so by me talking to this young man, I was able to say, hey, you can do this, 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 and this, but I need to see that you are able to do these things before I can even engage in working with you, because I need to see that you are willing to do the work that you're expecting me to do. And it's the same thing that is expected of me. When I was looking at mentors and I was saying, hey, I would like to do this or this, they specifically asked me, what is it that you want to do? Because we can allow every opportunity that you want, but you got to tell us specifically what you want to do. I still don't know what I want to do except telling stories, and drop me anywhere and I'm willing to learn. And that's the thing that I like about myself, is that I'm open to learning. And over the last 2.5 years, I spent an enormous amount of time going from one project to the next, from one area of expertise to the next. I wrote a summary of all my experiences, and I have over 24 experiences alone in the film industry, in areas that I've worked, and I'm still exploring others. But how does that help me? That's going to help me become a really caring and sensitive producer, because I have done the jobs and I know what is expected of them.
Interesting. You know, because as you mentioned that, you mentioned two words. What you mentioned, the caring and sensitive. So in an industry that I've heard, and I don't know anything about the industry that you are or swimming the waters in, you know, you hear all of these stories about just what you just said, people that are very insensitive, people that are devious, like people that have no concern for personal difficulties sometimes, etc., who are really good at the craft, but unfortunately life happens. So it's great to hear you share that. But when it comes to financing, and you just touched upon that a little bit, I would think, just from experience in life, that might be the most difficult part of getting people that can afford the funds, or to actually, I hate that word, buy into, but to actually, and I do, I hear people say, well, they have to get some buy-in. And so I just have to be honest with you. So instead of saying buy in, I simply say individuals that can see where you're trying to go rather than buy in. Do you find that difficult?
Let me touch base on H.E.N.R.I, for example. Even though H.E.N.R.I was a self-produced project where any of the expenses I paid for it, the producers invested, the crew invested, the actors invested, because if I couldn't pay them a fee, it didn't mean that they weren't worth that fee. It meant that they believed in the project, that they invested in the project. And so when we look at that, then it wasn't just me that made this project happen. It was all of the people that helped make it happen, that financed it. That's one thing. Buy-in. Finding money is a hard thing. Working for money is even more difficult. And convincing people to separate themselves from the money they've earned is wondrous. One of the things that we have to be cognizant of is developing a repute and disposition to respect other people's money. We can't just expect, oh, that person can afford it, let them give me $100,000, let them give me $1 million. I get to make my movie and I get to say I'm a filmmaker. The thing that has kept me from moving much faster in this industry is having worked with my own father, where I was the producer, where he made certain promises of deliverables that he didn't fulfill. And I didn't want to become a filmmaker or storyteller asking for money, and I didn't know how I could deliver the equitable value for the money I received, and or the return of investments to the monies I received. I didn't want to become that person because I know I felt as an investor working for someone who wasn't ethical in the way they responded to the way I worked with them.
Wow, very well put. Very well put. Hey, man, that's a perfect place to end tonight. I would like for us to discuss this again as you move forward. Well, not this particular piece here, but as you move forward in your filmmaking and getting this process, because that's powerful what you've just stated. That is very powerful. And sadly, if you allow me to add, many people don't get that. Many people that are on the end of the spectrum that you've just shared don't seem to understand that there are going to be situations where you know, it's kind of like that, what is the Kenny Rogers song? You have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And when you work with people that you expect the deliverables and they don't deliver and that kind of thing, you know, you can't let that stand in your way, man. So that's excellent. Now, I know that we've been asking direct questions, but I still, as we close the show, want to ask you if there's something you'd like to share with the audience as we close that might help those that are still excited about making film or getting in the film business.
One of the things that you have that is a very amazing tool that you don't have to pay anything for is a brain, is the creativity and thought. If you think it, write it down, create it, make it happen. Because as someone says, Rome wasn't built in a day. And another person would say, a building doesn't just stand up. It takes one brick at a time. And a journey starts with a single step. And when you think of breaking down your ideas and your creativity in little bits and pieces that is accomplishable, you're able to build the career or life or experience that you want. And it's not just film, it's everything that you want to build.
Wow, powerful. So Ryan, if some of these wonderful people wanted to contact you for more information or to get some pointers, or God forbid, start asking for the opportunity to maybe be involved in some of your productions, how might they make contact with you?
I'm on Instagram, TwinPapa321 on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, but less active on there, Ryan Singh Media. I'm also on Facebook, Ryan Singh Enterprises on Facebook. And of course, my website, RyanSinghEnterprises.com.
Fantastic. So Ryan, listen, it's been great having you. And again, give our best to Ava and Sebastian. They are certainly wonderful, wonderful babies, man. Listen, I'm excited for you, excited for your entire family. And I would love to get to see Henry myself. And I had several inquiries. They kept asking, how can we see it? How can we see it? and I never asked you that question. So,
Well, let me tell you how you can see it, and that's a very, very important question before we leave. One of the things that make us vibrant and repeated business entity as filmmakers is getting the support of the community. We invest a lot into the films that we make, and the community has to be able to buy into it, invest, show up, because everything that we do is based on numerics. If our numbers don't show up, if people don't see that there is support for the work that we're creating, they wouldn't invest the money. So until I have another screening, or until there's enough requests, I can put it on pay-per-view, we'll just have to wait.
Great, man. So listen, guys, it's been great. This has been the Nobody Asked Me Guy show. And again, we want to thank our guest tonight, Mr. Ryan Singh, writer, producer, actor, director, outstanding dad, along with his beautiful twins, Ava and Sebastian. I've been your host, Melvin Casey Lars, and we ask that you come join us each Friday night, 7:00 p.m. We have interesting guests all the time. And you can contact us at the Nobody Asked Me Guy show at gmail.com. The Nobody Asked Me Guy show at gmail.com. And we'll be more than happy to accommodate you. So again, Brother Ryan Singh, it's been great having you, my brother. And I look forward to us checking in more often and keeping this thing going. Have a great night.